DJ PK, and we're joined now by Mike Folta, radio play-by-play voice for the Utah Hockey Club. Mike, good morning.
Oh, good morning to you, DJ. Coming to you from beautiful Edmonton, up in oil country where it's a balmy 18 degrees right now. Spring has sprung up here in Alberta.
No wonder they love hockey, right? No wonder they pack the place. You want to go somewhere, you don't dare go outdoors. There's a big thing to do indoors. It's fun. Let's do that. Of course, hockey's a big deal there.
Of course it is. It also helps that you have the best player in the world, Connor McDavid, to watch every night at home, and maybe the third or fourth best player in the world, Leon Draisaitl, riding shotgun with him. That could also play a factor, but yes, it is actually a matter of safety for the people of Edmonton. Get indoors where it's warm.
Before we talk Edmonton, I want to look back at the Friday-Sunday roller coaster, the loss in Seattle and then the win in Vancouver. If you're only going to win one, obviously you want it to be Vancouver because it's a 4-point swing, because Vancouver, along with Calgary, St. Louis, and Utah, those four teams are fighting for that last playoff berth. Dropping those points in Seattle felt like such a missed opportunity. They're also not going to win them all. When you're around the team, how much are they able to rationalize the loss? How much does it eat at them and drive them in the next game?
I think there's a little bit of that, but also what we hear from Andre Tourigny and what kind of trickles down to the players is it sounds like they try to implement the midnight rule, where once the clock strikes midnight, it's over, it's done with, we're moving on. And that was a good thing in this case because Utah needed to put their best foot forward against Vancouver the other night. And, it's happened twice in Seattle where the Kraken have kind of lulled Utah to sleep. Tie game, kind of boring game going into the third period, not a lot of offense, and then boom, the Kraken capitalize on a miscue, and you wind up missing out on 2 points. And it's an 82-game season. There's going to be maybe half the games where you've got your legs, you're feeling good, and you have a chance to win. There's going to be probably a fourth of the games where you're buzzing, you're flying, you're getting all the bounces, and you can't do anything wrong. And there's going to be another fourth of the games where you don't have your legs, you're in trouble, the puck's not going your way, and you just don't have your best. And what we had the other night in Seattle was the latter, where Utah just did not put its best foot forward against a Kraken team that's below Utah in the standings, and they miss out on 2 points. But the good news was they brought it when it mattered, and I don't want to say they dominated Vancouver, but they didn't give the Canucks very much at all on Sunday night.
You're a baseball guy. You've told us that in previous visits. And I want you to know that as you did that, I thought of Tommy Lasorda, who I got to interview because he had ties to Salt Lake. And I got to interview him multiple times. And you sounded so much, and Tommy Lasorda would agree with you. And you're a baseball guy, so soak that up. Tommy Lasorda was not a hockey guy, but you're speaking his language. He used to say about baseball.
Tommy Lasorda's connection to Salt Lake? That's what I want to know.
The Ogden had a minor league team that was a Dodger affiliate when he was coming up, and he was on the, I don't know if he was the manager, I think he might have been coaching third base. But anyway, he was in Ogden on his way up. And he had a little affinity for it, and he knew there were baseball people, and he came back here and spoke. Stayed at the Grand America and did a thing. And was great. And he was obviously just a great public speaker. And he used to always say about baseball, everybody wins 50. Everybody loses 50. Yeah. Tell me what you do with the other 62. And then you look at the standings at the end of the year, and he's right. Everybody did lose 50. Everybody did win. What do you do with the other 62? And that's basically what you're going at there. And I get your point there. So the other thing I think as I watch these games unfold is that when we found out that hockey was coming, and I'm like, well, I don't know anything about this team, right? I'm a local sports guy. I follow local teams. We didn't have a local NHL team, so it's not on my radar. The first thing when I'm looking at this team is, man, this team, I know they're young, but they can actually score goals. Man, they are a sieve. They give up a lot of goals. And then you meet management as they come through town on the welcome tour, right? And GM Bill Armstrong, first I said, you're really patient with with your centers and your wingers, your attackers, but it's you're just turning over defenders. And he goes, yeah, the young guys have a chance to get good with our attackers. I'm going to be patient with them. Defenders aren't good enough. we're getting new guys. Like, okay, don't sugarcoat it, Bill. Give it to me straight. I can handle it. And defensively now, I feel like all of these games are going to be 1-1, 2-2, and the question is always, can the Utah Hockey Club find the second or third goal before the other guys do? I mean, they defend, but scoring goals is so difficult. Is there anything that can be done right now? I mean, obviously in the offseason, there's stuff you can do. But is there anything to be done right now to make the goal scoring a little easier? Because, man, once they give up that second or third goal, it just seems like their odds of winning go way down.
Yeah, I mean, the scoring part, I will admit, has been a little surprising that Utah hasn't scored more. But the defensive side has been surprising in a good way, where this team was really porous last year in Arizona. And after a gigantic remodel, I mean, the remodel on your place, DJ, was what, a couple million? I mean, that's kind of what we're looking at here with the Utah Hockey Club. Like, Bill Armstrong went out and got one of the best defensemen in the league, Mikhail Sergachev. Then he also, the same day, went out and got John Marino, a really steady guy from New Jersey, picked up both those guys via trade. And then in October, brings in two-time Cup champion Ole Mata. He picked up Ian Cole, another two-time Cup champion in free agency. And so the defense group has been totally remodeled, and now that's the strength of the team. Whereas previously, the strength of the team was probably up front. And I love the way that this team plays defensively. It can lead to maybe some boring periods when they're locking down the opposition, like what we saw the other night in Vancouver. I mean, the Canucks, through two periods, DJ had zero high-danger scoring chances through two periods. And that's a credit to the way that Utah's defensemen play, but it's also a credit to the attention to the defensive side of the game that the forwards have up front. Now, I will say Utah is starting to get some depth scoring here. Over the last, I think it's 4 games, 8 different forwards have scored a goal, and one of them is not Utah's leading scorer, Clayton Keller. So, I guess that's not true. We scored an empty netter if you count that. But all that is to say that Utah is now getting some production from its bottom 6 forwards, where Kevin Stenlund has goals in back-to-back games. The third line of Josh Doan, Jack McBain, Lawson Krause, they're creating a ton of offense and creating scoring chances. The fourth line has been really good recently with Stenlund and Michael Carcone and most recently Nick Bukestad. So you're starting to get that depth scoring and add that secondary layer, which is huge. And if Utah wants to get to the playoffs or make a run in the playoffs, they're going to need that depth scoring to continue.
Average number of saves a goalie, and granted, not all saves are created equal, to be sure. But, man, when I look at the box score and I see Vejmelka stopped 18 of 19 shots, that's great. But isn't the remarkable number 19? I mean, you shouldn't be facing 19 shots. That's your point about the work the 5 guys are doing in front of him to never let the puck get to the point where they can take a shot is outstanding. 19 seems way low.
Yeah, and it's funny, like a lot of people in football love using time of possession as a metric, right? Mm-hmm. My Indianapolis Colts never cared about time of possession. Peyton Manning didn't need to hold the ball. But there's something to be said for possessing the ball, right? Because that means the other team's not scoring. It's the same in hockey. When you're possessing the puck, that means the other team doesn't have the puck in the offensive zone typically. And so you look at the time of possession numbers, and Utah has been dominant over the last, I would say, couple of weeks, really since the Four Nations break, in time of possession, spending multiple more minutes with the puck in the offensive zone than what they allowed the other team to spend in their own zone. So that puck possession has a lot to do with the shot volume you're talking about. Other teams just don't have as many chances to shoot the puck. You've also got guys laying down their bodies and blocking shots. I mean, Ian Cole, I think, is second in the league in terms of block shots. So even when they are attempting to shoot the puck on Vejmelka, you got to get it past the maze of bodies that are in front.
Well, Ian Cole has been rewarded with a contract for another year in the league next season. How old is Ian now?
He is 35. I believe a plucky 35, I want to say.
Yeah, I thought it was either 35 or 36. And I may have had the number 36 thinking now that he has the contract, he'll be 36 next year. And that's an age, obviously,
he is
where
36. I just looked it up. You're right.
Oh, he is 36, so he'll be 37. But that's an age where obviously a lot of the guys that he came up with are out of the league, and he still gets to play. And why? Well, when you lay your body on the line like that, you ought to be rewarded, and he has been. So there you go. Let that be a lesson to all of us.
What was that?
Let that be a lesson to all of us if you want to keep doing what you're doing.
Well, and this guy, Ian Cole, is lifting before and after every game. Like, he's doing workouts after the game, and he takes a beating. I mean, he's standing in the way of slap shots. He's battling guys in the corner, and he's lifting. He's doing a workout after the game, like down near the locker room. It's insane.
Hard work pays off. Everybody here who's a Jazz fan heard Jerry Sloan say that about 10,000 times per season. So that just resonates with everybody here. You don't have to be a big Jazz fan. Jerry beat that into everybody's thick skulls over and over. I want to look ahead to Edmonton now. This is a huge game. Edmonton, it seems like, they're still really good, so I don't want to overplay this. They're in the top third of the league, clearly. You can just look at the standings and check that. But they don't seem to be as sharp since the Four Nations. They are missing some guys. What do you think of the Oilers' current state?
Well, you got to remember the Oilers have played a lot of hockey recently. They went to the Cup Finals last season, and really they haven't been the same team this year. They have won each of their last two games entering tonight, but they're not as dominant as maybe we thought they would be. Again, they still have some of the best players in the world: Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Evan Bouchard is the defenseman that it's kind of popular to make fun of, but he's one of the best defensemen in the National Hockey League. And the Oilers dominated the Utah Hockey Club when these teams last met on New Year's Eve. And Utah wasn't at full strength then, but nonetheless, they flexed their muscles and showed why they are one of the threats in the Western Conference. But I think they're still just trying to find that rhythm. Imagine going all the way to the Cup Finals, falling short, and then you have to try and reignite that same urgency for Game 1, Game 2 of the regular season, Game 3. It's a long way back up the mountain after you have gotten so close to the summit. And like I said, and like you said, they've lost some guys. They've dealt with some injuries this year, but for the most part, they have the guys they need in the lineup. They've lost some guys off of last year's team that were pretty valuable. St. Louis offer sheeted a couple of really good young players in Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway. Those were two big misses, or two guys that Edmonton is missing big time. You had a guy like Warren Fogle, who's making a difference in L.A., who was a really good depth forward for them, added a good spark and some speed. And so they're missing some of those fringe players from last year that ended up making big impacts down the stretch. And I think they'll be fine here in the regular season, but they're definitely not hitting the stride that we saw them hit last year when they were just simply more dominant. But nonetheless, all of that, you can toss it out the window because you give McDavid an inch and he'll take a mile. And it won't take much for one of those guys to embarrass you.
It's funny as you say all these things, and there is a core audience for hockey in this town that's hardcore and knows a lot of what you speak. But for a lot of people, they're getting dialed into it. But you sit there and talk about the hangover losing the Stanley Cup final. Well, that's what we've heard about teams that lose the Super Bowl forever. A decade, 2, 3, there's all kinds of examples. Teams that have lost in the Super Bowl and then missed the playoffs. So I get that. And then also I just wonder how much Edmonton, and this is what people are saying about the Boston Celtics now, they don't need to win the championship now. They'll turn it on. How much do you believe in teams' ability to turn it on when they get to the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I'm kind of back and forth on it. I think the momentum thing heading into the playoffs is kind of bogus, though. We had a couple of years ago, the Boston Bruins had the best regular season
right.
in the history of the NHL, and they got beat by an 8th seed. Yeah, exactly. And we see it all the time in the NCAA tournament as well. Happy March Madness, by the way.
Happy March Madness.
Best time of the year. But we see it all the time. A team wins a conference tournament or is hot coming into the NCAA tournament, and boom, they get knocked off by North Texas or Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm just throwing out a couple teams that have beat Purdue as double-digit seeds.
Nice.
And it happens, right? It happens. I think it's a little bit harder in a 7-game series because usually the better team wins. But think about this, PK. Like, the regular season for hockey ends in mid-April. The Stanley Cup playoffs, like Game 7, is late June. I mean, it's like going up against the NHL draft. Like, you could play, I think, 24, 26 extra. Well, that's bad math. You could play 28 extra hockey games during the course of the season. Like, the Oilers last year played, I think it was 25 playoff games, like extra games. I mean, that's 2 months, 2 more months of the season there. What you're talking about football, like it's doubly true for hockey. It is so much more hockey to make it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then your summer is shorter too, right? Less recovery time, and it kind of rolls downhill. You walk out of Game 7, and all of a sudden you end up in training camp like the next morning. So they're finding their way. I'm not really worried about them, and I think they can turn it on because they're hungry. They have not been to the mountaintop before, and there's some great footage out there of McDavid like screaming at his team in the locker room. Like these guys are highly motivated individuals.
All right, last thing before we let you go. You mentioned Purdue, your alma mater. You mentioned their first-round losses. You scared of High Point?
High Point, it's a really good offensive team. Shoots the 3-ball well. They don't play defense worth a lick, so I think Purdue is just going to be able to outscore them. I tell you what, I'm a little worried about the Cougars in their 6-11 matchup with VCU. VCU, they defend the 3-ball really well, and that's one of BYU's specialties. VCU, a good defensive team, and so if they're able to impose their pace on the Cougs, I think BYU could be in a little bit of trouble. And the same for Utah State. Like the Aggies' underlying numbers are not great. UCLA, a really good defensive team. So I don't love the matchups for the two Utah schools in the mix.
Look at you, Mike. You are a multi-sport threat. You're just breaking it down. You're just saying effortlessly. Hockey, football, basketball. You didn't even go to your wheelhouse yet. I was waiting for you to reference Mookie Betts losing 15 pounds. There's a lot of baseball players that have 15 pounds to lose. Mookie Betts is not on that list.
There's a lot of guys like in baseball in the best shape of their life right now, right? And coming out of spring training, like, oh yeah, best shape of my life. Never felt so good. Arm feels great. Feel like I could throw 300 innings, right? I mean, that's what everybody's saying coming out of spring training.
Nobody's going anywhere near 300 innings. The general manager won't allow it. He'll call down and tell the manager to pull the guy in the 5th inning. Welcome to Major League Baseball.
How are the Bees looking?
I don't know the answer to that specifically. Honestly, the problem is the Angels organization has had some issues. So the Bees are typically right about 500, a little under 500. And that's just the thing with AAA baseball. If anybody gets hot, the Major League team just calls everybody up. Yeah. So they'll tear you. If you are good, they'll tear you apart. And the Angels haven't really been good. They haven't had a lot of big prospects come through lately. So,
well, before we get to baseball, we've got March Madness, and I can't wait. We've got madness in the Western Conference playoff race in the NHL, and we've got the real deal March Madness as well. But best of luck to BYU and Utah State. I'll probably end up picking them just for the heck of it. But
okay,
got my model running the analytics here, looking at all the numbers.
All right, Mike, we appreciate it as always, and we will hear you on the call. The Edmonton Oilers, big game in the playoff race because they're all big games at this point. Thanks a lot.
Yep, thanks, DJ.
Mike's appearance brought to you by Hercules Credit Union. Hercules, first federal credit union, growing stronger together. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Alex Jensen had the press conference. What did we learn? That is next. Stay with us. Also, on the other side of this, Yak, you want to give away some tickets?
Let's do it.
It's the Boston Celtics and the Utah Jazz Friday night. We'll give away 2 tickets on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
So you think you know everything about college basketball, huh?
These people are not dumb. They're very smart.
Okay, smart guy. Time to put that knowledge to the test and go head-to-head with the Zone staff. It's another edition of KSL Sports Basketball Mayhem. Log on right now at KSLSports.com to fill out your bracket. The listener with the top bracket will receive $1,000 of cold, hard cash. And if you finish with a better bracket than... let's see here. Who can we pick on? How about Jeremiah Jensen? You'll be entered into a drawing to win $500. It's KSL Sports Basketball Mayhem, powered by Omada Real Estate. Download the free Omada app today from the real estate experts at the Stern Team.
So I've spent the last 13 years in the NBA, so that's kind of where my mind is, but I think it's something that'll evolve. In talking to some of the players, some of the board of trustees, I think it's something that'll change and you have to tailor it to your team. But I think the Big 12 is a tough physical conference. It's an underrated basketball conference in my mind. But I think as far as style, it's going to be a lot of NBA, but it depends on the personnel I have.
There is Alex Jensen at the Huntsman Center, introduced as the 17th basketball coach at the University of Utah. He was careful in the press conference, said what he wanted to say, held back on the things he didn't want to say. There are specifics we all wanted to hear. There were questions. Basically, are you hiring Andre Miller? Andre is so popular. So many people want him hired. I think it'll happen. I don't know that. I think it'll happen. I think it's like waiting for Alex to get hired. I thought he was going to get hired. I think a lot of people thought he was going to get hired. I think a lot of people thought it's not going to be somebody else. It's going to be Alex. But why isn't it happening? Sometimes just things take the time they take. Now, Alex did say that he's going to finish the season with the Mavericks. So that means 4 more weeks. Now, if they're in the play-in, which, they may not be, but if they make it, then that's a few more days on top of that, however long that lasts. I would think not very. I don't think they'll make it. But in any case, 4 weeks before he's full-time devoted to the Utes. And I think one thing that was answered yesterday, or has been answered over time, as we've heard more about the transfer portal and the fact that the fact that players are getting their next landing spot and they know how much money they're going to get for next season before this season is over, in the regular season. I think that goes to part of what was up with the timing of Craig. Why not let him finish? Because they wanted to look, because the way the portal works now, the new coaches are already behind. And for those of you who are worried that Alex is going to be behind because he's with the Mavericks until the middle of next month, yes. Alex was behind based on Craig Smith getting fired and him getting hired, because the portal is just way in front of that. Now, it'll be interesting to see how that changes over time. Are we going to see coaches get fired even earlier? Because that's what we've seen in football. The talent acquisition is so important. Kyle Whittingham has told us so many times, this is like 90% of the deal. And it was 90% of the deal when you were picking teams at recess. Get the best players, and you're going to win. Don't outthink the room. It's simple. Get the best players, and you will win. Phil Jackson won a lot of championships. Was he a good coach? Yes. Did he get the best players? Absolutely. So in football, we've seen coaches get fired earlier because they moved the signing date from February to December. And now coaches get fired earlier. I think we're going to see the same thing in basketball. If they're poaching players of other teams' rosters while the season is still going, every new coach is then behind the 8 ball. And that's why, and we just had Jared Calhoun say this, number one, there's so many players gone already, the most important thing you can do is retain the players on your roster. Retain the players on your roster. So we'll see, and I know Yak, as he was telling me yesterday, has already heard rumors about players. And based on what we've heard, I would think every player has been contacted or heard something or has an idea.
If you're,
It's just, right? At this point, it would be impossible not to. Because the fact is, it was happening at least a month ago and probably earlier than that. But certainly at least a month ago. So is Alex behind? Yes. Is his staying with the Mavericks going to put him further behind? Sure, but he's already way behind. The first year is difficult. And that's why we see so many coaches. You see this in football too. You see so many coaches have a great year in their second year. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's the learning curve, and there's the getting the pieces in place and having more time to recruit. And that doesn't change just because there's money. I thought that was Alex's most interesting, unexpected answer is when he said college is becoming like the G League because guys come and go in the G League all the time. Guys leave and go overseas, or guys from overseas come back. There's constant movement. And so I thought the thing that was predictable, but it was the right answer, Alex talking about, the most important thing is to be genuine and be authentic. Especially with this generation, says the old guy. Especially with this generation. People want to know why you're doing something, and they want to know what the plan is. They don't just do it because the coach blew the whistle and yelled. That's what I grew up with. And some of you may have grown up with it too. It's going to be different. And Alex said you got to get to know the people. And the thing is, I think that's true. And you may like it and you may hate it. I think that's an advantage for Alex. I think Kevin Young figured that out. It was a small thing, but I think it had a big impact. Kevin Young had a lunch, and he must have had at least 15, maybe 20 media members there. Nobody talked to him for that long. It wasn't time. I mean, do the math. You're there for an hour. It was a little more than an hour. There's 20 people. Well, you didn't talk to them for 3 minutes. I mean, everybody's eating at some point. And it just, but it was a small thing. Get to know people on some level. Look somebody in the eye and start to build a relationship, even if it's a small thing. There's so many people in sports, it has become so transactional. I was in a hallway at a Jazz game, and this is probably, I want to say like 2022. And I'm talking to a local media member who you would all know. And a visitor comes over. And it was an Eastern Conference team that was in town. A visitor comes over, a member of the visiting team's media contingent, comes over to complain because they know this media member, that they know each other. I don't know this person. And they complain about how transactional everything is and there's no access and these stupid rules and blah, blah. It's the way all sports are going. And so the people who break through that and are genuine, authentic, and form some kind of relationship, they have an advantage. And Alex can do that. I think Kevin Young's done it to a degree. I think Alex can do it. I think we've seen Kalani do it for sure. And those things, they tend to pay off. It's funny how you create a vibe. It's like you can't really put your fingers on it, but that's why when PK talks about his gut instinct, he's tapping into those vibes people put out there. So I thought Alex was very on brand. It was like on the one hand, he played 25 years ago. And on the other hand, listening to him talk, he's changed a little, but he's basically the same guy. I mean, he's older, and he references, the wife and the kids and moving them to a different time zone. That's different. He's moving them again. Although, back to Utah, place they're familiar with should make it a little easier. He didn't go too deep into his staff. He didn't go too deep into how much money the U has to work with. He didn't really go into that at all. Just the way he talked alluded to a certain sense of confidence. But beyond that, really nothing. So we'll see how that all plays out, and if he's able to, how many guys he's able to retain and bring in. I think when he looks at the film, he's going to see a couple things. He did reference Rick Majerus, and Majerus was, and how Majerus ruins the game because you start to break it down. It doesn't take very long to watch the Utes and think they weren't that far away. The problem is they couldn't win on the road. They weren't good defensively. They got caught in too many high-scoring games and got outscored. And those are things that would have driven Rick Majerus nuts. I don't see how Alex Jensen could have played for him and coached for him without being driven nuts. And I was in post-game press conference with Quinn Snyder when he was seething over the lack of attention to basic defensive principles. So opponents shot almost 42% against the Utes, which is not a terrible number, but it's not good enough. The elite teams get around 40%, and Majerus' teams were always there. And BYU wasn't there when they were terrible, and when Steve Cleveland got them good, the number dropped there. And the game has changed with three-point shots, but it hasn't changed that much. And I think of all the things to watch for next year, Alex Jensen, whoever he brings in, and we'll all look at, how they shoot and how they score and how they handle the ball. But that defensive number, it was the first stat Rick looked at on every box score. What did the opponent shoot? How hard did we play? Play hard, play smart, play together.
says every coach at every level in every team sport. Play hard, play smart, play together. No coach ever said, play stupid, play selfish, do your own thing. No, and that defensive number really measures that in basketball. And that's why Rick looked at it, and that's why he beat it into PK's head. And a 42% number, well, not awful. It is not an awful number. It wasn't good enough. And let's see if Alex gets that number down to 41 or 40. If you love numbers, that's one thing to look for. And if you don't like numbers, and if you like the vibe and the energy, just watch how hard they move. We were talking with with VCU's play-by-play guy, and Virginia Commonwealth's defensive numbers are really good. And he said it really comes down to they do all the things about, how do you fight through a screen? How much you move your feet to help and then recover if the ball switches sides of the floor. All the stuff you're taught at basketball camps when you're a kid, and when you're in high school, your JV coaches yelling at you, if you're ever going to play in the varsity, do all those things at a high level. That's what's gotten VCU there. Not that they got a bunch of 6'9" athletes around the perimeter just shutting everybody down. And I think that's what Alex is going to bring. And I see 3 true road wins in the last 2 years. That's why the Utes aren't in the NCAA tournament. That's it right there. And how many coaches have you heard say, you got to defend and win on the road because the shots aren't as likely to fall? And BYU fans are sweating bullets over the NCAA tournament game Thursday because if the threes don't go, is BYU going to play good enough defense? They play okay defense. I don't think they play great defense. VCU plays great defense. So who gets to 70 in that game? I saw Greg Wrubell tweeting out those numbers. VCU's like 1-5 when they give up 70 points. And when they don't, they win. And BYU, on the other hand, is averaging like 80 points a game. So can you slow that game down? Can you lower that score a little bit? That'll be the question for BYU on Thursday. That'll be the question for Alex Jensen and the Utes next year. Because if they break through on a few road games, not against the best teams, if they can just handle the bottom third of the league, the middle third of the league on the road, they're good to go. You look at these road records, man, most teams aren't winning the big games on the road. They're doing it. Arizona went to Kansas at the end of the year and lost. Kansas was in the middle of the league. Arizona's still like a 4 seed. You just need a little bit of success on the road. 3 wins in 2 years, that's not good enough. That's not nearly good enough. So there you go. If you want to hear Alex Jensen, go to the first hour of our podcast, and the whole show's podcasted. And the first hour, he was the last segment. Was the press conference. You heard Mark Harlan talk a little bit, and you heard him talk about building a relationship with Alex, because they spoke last time, and I don't think either side came away that thrilled. And they had a lot of people pushing the two of them together, but at the end of the day, people can say what they want and push, and the alumni can do what they want, and the alumni did a lot. But at the end of the day, there's still 2 guys who have to make the deal, and they made it this time. Not last time, but this time they did. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up top of the hour, Aggie basketball NCAA tournament game. Spencer Nelson, radio analyst, will join us at the top of the hour. DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone.
You love your dog. You can't imagine life without him. So it's time to vote for Fido and the rest of his kind.
What up, dog?
It's the Man's Best Friend Bracket Challenge, where you can vote for the best dogs on the planet. Vote now at KSLSports.com. But take your time. We know these decisions can be rough. Really? Rough? Who wrote this?
You better watch yourself, big dog.
It's the Man's Best Friend Bracket Challenge. Going on at KSLSports.com. Powered by IFA. Stop by one of their stores today or visit them online at IFA.coop. IFA. Helping to grow the things you love.
DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. It's Utah Jazz Ticket Tuesday. We got a pair of tickets to watch the Jazz and the Celtics at the Delta Center Friday night. Caller 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE wins the tickets. Caller 12, 801-575-ZONE wins a pair of tickets to see the Jazz and the Celtics at the Delta Center Friday night. It's not the big game of the week. That'd be the Wizards tomorrow night. The 2 worst teams in the NBA square off. Sure, the champs will be here Friday, but is that really what you want to see? We are in the bizarro times. Oh, man. This is year 3 of missing the playoffs. The rebuild continues. I suspect, I think there's like a 90% chance we're going to have a year 4 of this. That you got 13 more games to put up with this year, 82 next year, 95 to go. And then I think they'll start trying to win. But, man, they got a top 8 protected draft pick next year. Do you want to handle Oklahoma City with all their good young talent, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th pick in the draft? Maybe even the 15th or 16th pick in the draft, depending on how things go. Or in a really deep draft class, do you want one of the top 8 picks to get somebody who's supposed to be really, really good? I think we know the answer to that, which is why I think we're going to get 13 more games of this year and 82 next year. All right, DJ and PK, speaking of the NBA, there are times all sports overlap, not only on the calendar, but just in the ideas, the concepts, and the stuff that drives them. And, man, when I was a kid, many, many, many moons ago, so many decades ago, sports was national. And there weren't that many foreign players and all that. And sports has become international. The Dream Team in 92, explosive growth in the NBA since that moment. There were few international players before that. Drazen Petrovic and I think Arvydas Sabonis played before that. So there were a few. But now it's just massive. And we're seeing Major League Baseball. I mean, it's just there's so many players from Japan coming over, and they are so good. I mean, put Ohtani at the top of the list, obviously. The Dodgers just played there in Tokyo against the Cubs, opened the season, and now the Dodgers have 2 stars. Yamamoto with the start today. They signed Sasaki in the offseason. So that's 3 guys now. And the internationalization of baseball is just going to continue, right? We've already seen players come from all around the Caribbean and the Caribbean Rim, right? It's not unusual to see a Venezuelan in the major leagues. Baseball has now taken regular season games to Mexico, to Monterey, to London, England. They went to South Korea. The Padres and Dodgers were there. It was last year or 2 years ago. And then
last year.
And Tokyo. It was last year, right? So we're seeing all of this, and it's just going to continue. It's only a matter of time. Australia, we're just going to keep seeing more of this. And I'm waiting for the NBA to move regular season games. I can't believe it hasn't already happened.
And the Paris game, the 2 Paris games earlier this season.
And I don't like the midseason and the travel and the go at the start of the season. We're all football obsessed. And instead of just sending 2 teams, I think everyone should go. I think you should pair up 30 teams, 15 games. Well, really 30 games because everybody might as well play twice once you go that far. And they've gone before. Like I've talked to Ron Boone because the Jazz took a trip and opened a season in Japan in like either the late 80s or early 90s. And they were in their hotel, which is a skyscraper, and it had an earthquake. And it's built to rock and sway in the earthquake. And Booner was like, yeah, that was no fun. That is not Booner's idea of a good idea. He did a good time. He did not want to be up there for that. But it's for safety. There was no damage. It was fine. So I know they've gone. And so it's happened. But it seems to me like an annual commitment. Go, grow the game. You want more money. You're rolling in it. Everybody wants more. The NBA wants more. Just go. Send all 30 teams out. Everybody plays 2 games. Just pair up, and somebody goes to Australia, and somebody goes to France, and somebody goes to London, and somebody goes to wherever they got 15, 20,000 seat arenas with luxury suites. And we were listening to them earlier in the show. Japan, China obviously should be on the list. But maybe Jordan Clarkson, before he retires, should be playing a game in the Philippines. They'd go crazy. It'd just make the NBA bigger. I can't believe they don't do it. I can't believe they don't go in what is now the preseason, come back and have 8, 9, 10 days, whatever, because that's what baseball is doing here, to let them deal with the jet lag. They're doing this now, but the season for everybody else opens a week from Thursday. So they played this morning. The Dodgers won 4-1. They'll play one more game. Then they'll fly back. They'll have a week to readapt all the time zones, and then away they go. Seems inevitable. And, Yak, as long as we're changing everything, go ahead and let people hear. Earlier in that, you had an idea. You and Deion Sanders getting together to change the world. Whenever I think of Deion, I think of you. The 2 of you are inseparable.
Oh, yes.
You're joined at the hip.
Yes. Yeah, Coach Prime and I. Let's go.
Right. Well, Dion was saying while other people are getting rid of spring games, he wants the NFL model. He would like to play against another school. And Syracuse, their coach already volunteered and said, yeah, we'll fly out to Boulder 3 days.
Fran Brown.
There are plenty of people who've either played or coached in the NBA or who have friends and, people they've worked with or played with who've been in the NFL. Like, NFL teams do that all the time. They get together for their joint practices. And Dion wants to see his guys against somebody else and get a better measure of them. And it's something for the guys to look forward to, right? You get a little more out of them. They get a little more juice going, right? So you take it a step further, Yacht. Give them your idea.
So here's the deal. I've always thought the FCS games are a waste of everybody's time during the regular season. So if you want to keep those on the docket and still get the FCS teams their money, because obviously they rely on that money, the $500,000 to $1 million, whatever the money you're paying them. So essentially you take that FCS game, you sync up your spring practices with that FCS team, and at the end of spring practice you get together and you play an FCS versus FBS game that finishes off the spring practice like Dion wants to see here against another team, but allows those players to obviously go out and show what they're capable of against another opponent.
See, and you got all these Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays when the NCAA tournament isn't happening.
Absolutely.
Baseball hasn't started yet. What do you put on TV? That's why we have this ridiculous Crown basketball tournament. I can't wait for PK to get back. Because when I said the Utes were done, he's like, no, they got this new Crown thing. I'm like, why would the Utes go to that? I mean, I know I've heard about it, but I mean, they're 16 and 16. They're changing coaches. What is the point? It's worse than I thought. And Yak, you pointed out there's NIL money. The players are getting paid to play.
Sure, and that's the other thing about this is NIL's in
okay,
play in
and
all
so
of
that,
this.
which I didn't know that. I missed that. Right. And so if I'd known that, I probably would have had a different answer. But I was completely out to lunch with what I expected on this, because not only are the Utes in it, Colorado was in it. Colorado, they're in last place.
Well, we have 6
They were
Big
sitting in
12
last
teams
place
overall.
all year.
Like among it was just
what?
Yeah, so it's a 16-team.
What are
thing,
they?
and
Okay,
we got 6 of the Big 12 teams.
Colorado.
Yeah, I know.
What are we doing here? Well, you know what? If the kids want to play, and if somebody wants to pay them, and if a TV network wants to show it, I don't have to watch it. I think it's ridiculous. I don't have to watch it. But why shouldn't they go play another game, make some money, have some fun? Okay. And if somebody's going to sit there and watch it and have a good time, fine. I can watch something else. There'll be something else on. I don't want to watch Colorado play another basketball game, but maybe there's somebody out there who does. I say another. Well, I guess I did watch them because they played Utah and BYU. So I did watch them. All right, DJ and PK, it's 97.5 The Zone. Coming up, Spencer Nelson, former Utah State basketball star, current radio analyst, joins us next to talk Aggies and the NCAA tournament. We got another pair of Jazz tickets to give away in the 9 o'clock hour. We will do that. Spencer joins us next. Stay with us.